Hey there, and welcome back to 31 Days of Horror. And we are on day 30. Guys, there's only one day left, and it's the big day. So today is day 30, like I just said, and I checked out a unique title called Dream Scenario. Um, I have seen a little bit about this movie. I have seen, some rumblings, people talking about it. I don't personally know anybody who's watched it yet. So this was my first opportunity to kind of see, what it was all about. And I have to say, I was not at all disappointed. Um, this this film is something different. And I have to commend both the filmmakers and I have to commend Nicolas Cage because his film choices recently have been bonkers, but also wonderful. And this is no exception. Um, so this movie stars Nicolas Cage, and he plays a middle-aged professor of environmental biology kind of things. And he's, for all intents and purposes, he's a boring middle-aged guy. And that's kind of the point, is that, when he's introduced, he's just, there's nothing particularly special about him. And in the beginning of the film, he is actively trying to get people to see something special about him, to kind of be more than what he has been previously. He's looking for that big break. He's looking for that acknowledgement. And he does this incredibly well, but it's also really interesting because he has a completely different look. He's still Nicolas Cage. You can tell, but he does not look like the Nicolas Cage you're expecting. I mean, we have seen him in all sorts of mediums. He has played an action star, he's played a criminal, he's played crazy, he's played cops, he's played the heartthrob, the leading man. He's done comedy, he's done drama, he's done everything. We've seen Nicolas Cage do pretty much everything. This is the first time I've actually seen Nicolas Cage look different than himself. Um, in a really like convincing way. He's, balding, he's got the kind of, the ring hair, um, beard, he's a little bit stockier. He truly looks like your average, like throw a rock and you'll hit one middle-aged man. And the premise of the movie, it's kind of a simple premise, but how it develops is really something cool. The premise of the movie is that he's just this normal middle-aged professor. He teaches at a college. He's got 2 kids. He's married. Everything in his life is pretty run of the mill. And when I say that, I mean he's not particularly happy. He's not particularly like satisfied, but he's not dissatisfied. He's not miserable. Um, he really just wants some recognition. He wants to not be looked at as like this boring dad or this boring professor. He wants to be published. He wants notoriety. He wants people to look at him as the expert on things. And I think all of us can kind of sympathize with that. No matter where you are in your life, I think we're all sort of looking for some sort of validation that we're going in the right direction or that our life has some sort of meaning. And that's just a common across the board thing with everybody. Um, and make a note of that it's kind of common across the board with everybody, because that's what I think is the most significant part of this movie. So what ends up happening is he starts turning up in people's dreams. And as the movie, kind of is introduced, we see that he's like, it starts off, he's in his daughter's dream, and she's having this like nightmare where she's like floating away, and he's just kind of standing there like raking leaves and just like watching, observing, what's going on. And so when she tells him about this, he's upset about the fact that he's not doing anything in the film. Like, she's having a hard time and he's just observing. He's not helping, he's not participating, he's just an observer. And So that seems to be he seems to be a sticking point for his character. Um, is that he's not seen as useful. He's not seen as a hero. He's not seen as significant. So he, is like, is this a reflection of how she sees me? Like, is this, what she thinks of me as, her father? And you can kind of see he's not super secure. And then the story kind of progresses. He and his wife, they go to a performance. I think it was a play or something. And he runs into an old girlfriend who asks if she can, if they can get together for coffee. And then his wife kind of, and he's like, oh, yeah, sure, that'd be great. She's like, oh, yeah, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. And his wife is very uncomfortable with this. Um, and she's a little suspicious, thinks this woman might have ulterior motives, that maybe she wants to reconcile, and they've been married for 15 years. So, she's worried that maybe he's going to cheat. And so we kind of get this really honest look into the dynamics of their relationship and the dynamics of them as people. Neither one of them are completely secure in themselves, in their relationship, and even in their lives, because we do see his wife is trying to get on new projects at work. She wants to, be able to express herself more. She wants to be able to be put on better projects and things. He wants to be recognized for things. And uh, as things unfold, it turns out that he is appearing in many people's dreams, not just his daughters. He's got, he teaches classes. People in his class are having dreams about him. His ex-girlfriend wanted to meet up with him because she had a dream about him where she was, there was a car accident. She was helping somebody who was dying in her arms, and he just sort of, walked by. He was just observing. And he starts realizing that a lot of people are having these dreams that are around him. And she is asking him if she can write about this in her blog that she does. And he's kind of like, oh, yeah, sure, whatever. And that kind of gains some notoriety. Then he starts getting messages of more and more people. She had posted on social media. He starts getting messages from all these people he's never even met going, dude, who are you? You're in my dream too. Why am I dreaming about you? And in all of these dreams, he ends up talking to people. He ends up, kind of going on local TV a little bit to address things and just say he has no idea what's going on. He hasn't met a lot of these people. He's never heard of this, but, it could kind of be like a mass hysteria, mass psychosis thing going on where, it's a shared delusion of these dreams or something. And his wife is, kind of getting on his case. She doesn't want him to lean into it. She doesn't really know why he's kind of giving this any traction. It's such a weird thing. And he says, because, I'm not really doing anything. Like, I'm just showing up in these people's dreams. I'm not doing anything. And he himself wasn't doing anything other than just living his day-to-day life. And so it kind of just starts out as this novelty, and it's interesting. And so now we're talking about 31 Days of Horror here, and now we're a little bit, I believe we're like 8 minutes into this video, and I haven't mentioned anything about anything being scary yet. And that's the interesting thing about this movie, is because every time I was watching it, and I would sit here and I would go like, why is this a horror film? And then I would start thinking about, well, it's kind of scary that just randomly he could start showing up in people's dreams, and that his presence is in strangers' minds. Like, that's creepy and weird. And other characters are starting to say, like, that's creepy and weird. Like, he wasn't doing anything. He was just standing there. But through this, he starts getting some notoriety, and he starts getting very excited that this is his open door to another open door. It's going to open doors for him, and he's going to be able to have this kind of this recognition, this life that he wants, because this is going to let him, he's going to be able to get a publisher. He's going to be able to get attention for his, his work, his thoughts, whatever. And that's his focus here. And then as he's kind of, going into that, then he hears from somebody that in their dream, he was not doing nothing. They were together in her dream. And that kind of changes things for him. Now he's starting to think about things a little bit different, because it was bothering him that in all of these other people's dreams, no matter what was happening in the dream, all he was doing in their dream was observing. And for him, this was a reflection on himself, of people viewing him as um, standing still, just being an observer, not being an active participant in his life, or not being an active participant in anybody's lives. And that was really getting to him. And then learning that now he was doing something in somebody's dream, that was a lot more interesting to him. And he was excited about that too, to a degree, until what he was doing in people's dreams started to become something violent. People started dreaming that he was murdering them or assaulting them or hurting them, chasing them, doing these terrible things to them. And so now people were afraid of him. And so he was having things happen, like people didn't want to come to his classes anymore. Um, his wife's work was being affected by people's perception of her husband. His relationships with people were now failing because they were viewing him in this scary light. Meanwhile, this man himself hasn't done anything. And the story progresses from there. And the reason that I said, kind of keep it in mind that this is a real life kind of relatable thing is because the overall feeling of the film is true horror. It doesn't have to be supernatural. It doesn't have to be something crazy. It doesn't have to be ghosts or aliens or serial killers or slashers or anything like that. It can just be something that happens to many people, even a few people, that's unexplained and kind of unsettling. And watching the progression of how people react to that scenario, the dream scenario, as the movie is called, is really fascinating, but it's also terrifying because it's realistic. We've seen it in true life things. We get this mob mentality about things, and we see it on social media, we see it with politics, we see it with opinions on movies, we see it a lot on Reddit. Is that when the majority, when the mass of people gets an idea in their head about something, it becomes this collective force. And they reference in the movie a couple of times that he's getting canceled, like that cancel culture. And it's an interesting commentary because the truth of the matter is the man himself did nothing. It's this presence in people's minds that has made him a threat in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's really interesting, especially to discuss this time of year. We have a big election coming up. There are a lot of high tensions on both sides regarding the election. And I think it's really interesting how, we can look at the past of things when it comes to politics, or even when it comes to, people in the public eye, how public opinion really matters. And I forget his name. There was a politician a few years ago whose entire campaign was derailed because he made a weird noise when he was campaigning, and it soured people's opinion of him. And he sort of got canceled for being really excited and making an exclamation, and people were like, "That was weird. I don't like it. He makes me uncomfortable." And so it's interesting because it's a kind of similar concept, and we can look at it too when you have fake news on both sides about candidates, about motives, about plans, about resources, about backgrounds, and all of these things. And we live in this culture too where misinformation travels so quickly. And so you can very easily have these situations where somebody who's essentially not done anything incorrect or wrong is canceled, or kind of gets a negative, opinion surrounding them because of what people experience, not firsthand. And so the dreams here, that's not a firsthand experience. It's not like you met this man in real life and you reached out your hand to shake his hand, like, "Oh, it's nice to meet you, sir," and he clocked you in the face. For a lot of the people in this movie, they've never met him. It's just some dude who showed up in their dreams, and then through, blogs, articles, interviews, and things like that, they were then clued in from social media as like, oh, this is who this guy is that you've been seeing. And then their perception of the real person is then characterized by their personal experiences, but their personal experiences are skewed by being dreams. They're not real experiences. They're experiences that have been um, affected by your brain. And um, I think it's fascinating to think about. And I think it's really scary to think about because it happens all the time. We see it with social media. We see it with influencers who are the hot thing one minute and then the next minute they're being canceled because they looked at a different influencer the wrong way, or they responded to a comment in a way that was misperceived or was kind of rude, or you have a content creator out there who has a bad day, snaps at somebody, and now they have a reputation and their career of sorts is over. But also a big theme in this movie is Nicolas Cage's character, Paul, the professor, for the majority of his life has not been a creator. He has sort of been standing still, sort of resting on his laurels of what he's already accomplished. And he's waiting for his big break to happen without doing the work for it. And this is also a cautionary tale of he has this big break. He gets the notoriety that he wants. He gets the ability to publish a book that he wants to publish about research. But then it comes, and then it's like, but he never actually really did the research. He just wants the idea of writing a book. He wants his name on something as a way to show that he's accomplished something. But when you look at the film itself, he's accomplished a lot. He's been married for 15 years. He has 2 daughters who are beautiful. He's a doctor. He is a professor. He is a tenured professor at a university. And that is something that so many people aspire to, and it is an incredibly difficult track to take. It was a track I considered taking myself at one point. I made it through my master's degree and then just said, see ya, academia. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I'm done. He stuck it out. He accomplished those things. Those are successes in his life, but he doesn't feel like he can put his name on any of those things as accomplishments, as things he will be remembered for. They are things that he's done, not things he is aspiring to. And so he feels stuck. He feels unaccomplished. And that is also a very relatable thing because I think a lot of us have gotten to certain points, happens sometimes when you have the high school reunion coming up, or you run into an old friend, or you see somebody on social media you haven't thought about in a long time, and you might look at their life and then you start reflecting on your own and you start looking at what they've done, and it's reminding you about what you haven't done. The thing is, when we sit in that mindset, then we don't do things. It kind of gives us the paralysis of then sitting there and waiting for something to happen, for something to all come together for us, where we're never actually taking action ourselves. And in all of this, we saw that every time he chose to take an action, it was always self-serving. And he would then suffer the consequences for that self-serving action. And so this was very layered, and there were no jump scares. There was no cat jumping on a piano. There was no monster. There was no, even though the whole movie is about dreams and nightmares, even the snippets, the images that we saw of actual dreams and nightmares, they weren't necessarily comedic. A lot of it is some dark comedy. This is said to be a horror comedy. But there's, instead of being an air of malice, there's more an air of confusion, of longing for decisiveness. Whereas, so originally he was just observing in these dreams, which is his inactivity, or his perceived inactivity throughout his life. And then when he starts gaining notoriety and he starts taking some self-serving actions, then we see the dreams start changing to him hurting people. And it's because he's started taking action, but he hasn't done anything, he hasn't done any of the work to make the action successful. So instead of, you know, being actually successful, publishing the book he actually wants to publish, he doesn't have the research to publish that book. So he ends up publishing something way less, like way less impressive because he didn't do the work. And so he gets this notoriety because he's been appearing in people's dreams, but he didn't actually do anything. He has nothing to take credit for here other than existing. And he's trying to use this as a stepping stone. He's trying to find a way to take credit for this. And that's what ends up backfiring. And that's the true horror in all of this. So is it something that you're going to sit down with your girlfriend and she's going to snuggle up close to you because, she's scared and wants to snuggle? No. But is this one of those movies that you're going to watch and it's really going to make you think? And if you're somebody who's prone to existential dread, you're probably going to have a good think after this and then go to bed and, need a nap, then yes, I think that's what this is. And for me, this is definitely a lot more successful in the psychology of things and in the execution of things than other horror films that deal with the psyche or your personal feelings, such as like The Babadook. I know a ton of people who love the movie The Babadook. I hate that movie. And I know that's a very unpopular opinion, and I am not saying that my opinion holds any weight whatsoever. But the reason that I didn't love that film is because it introduced such amazing concepts and imagery and a great premise, and then cast the two most unlikable, irritating people in the main roles. That kid and his mother were the two most irritating people I've ever seen on film. And for the entire movie, they just grated on me so much that by the end, when they did the whole conclusion of like, oh, it was Grief the whole time as the real monster. Okay, cool. But like, I hate this movie. These people are annoying. We got to this point in the end. I don't even care that it's clever. I don't care that it's different. I just don't ever want to hear or see these two people ever again. And so that is my criticism of it. It has nothing to do with the filmmaking. It has nothing to do with the story. I'm also, I like that concept of it's because feelings are real. Grief is real. Your personal your ego, your vision of yourself, your thought process on your accomplishments, the view you have of the people around you, the people you hold close to you, all of that is very, very significant. And then to have that kind of used, also dreams are personal. They're very personal. I mean, there's plenty of dreams that I've told people about because I'm like, this was wild, you got to hear this. There's also plenty of dreams that I've kept to myself because I'm like, I can't explain this. This made me feel weird. This was kind of scary. This was hazy. And I'm like, dreams are weird and they're bonkers and we can't always explain them. Most of the time we can't. And to kind of weaponize that, they make a brief mention of Freddy Krueger in these films. And I think that's cool to mention Freddy Krueger because Freddy Krueger was based on a real concept of there were, I believe it was students in Asia who were not sleeping. They had for some reason they weren't sleeping. I'm not sure if it was nightmare related or if it was study related, work related. I'm not really positive, but there were teenagers who weren't sleeping, and as a result, they started dying. And then, Wes Craven took this concept, and that's where he created Freddy Krueger from. And it's a powerful concept that dreams can affect you physically. They can affect you mentally. They can affect you emotionally. I mean, I think we've all heard the joke of, the husband cheated on the wife in a dream and now she's mad at him in real life. We all have those feelings because dreams happen in our minds, and our minds are where we experience 100% of our lives. So dreams can feel and seem just as real as the waking world for us. And to then have that in some way weaponized against us, and especially in such a way of like it's weaponized against us by just some dude. There's nothing special about him. There's not like he's not supernatural. He's not some warlock trying to take over the world. He's not some evil guy. He's just some guy. And that's scary enough because how many of us we have dreams where we're like, oh yeah, and then there was some guy there and he was like, hey. So imagine if you kept seeing that same guy and then somebody else was like, oh yeah, man, I have dreams about that guy too. He's never really doing anything. He's just hanging out. And then all of a sudden, once you start realizing other people are seeing him too, then he starts trying to kill you in your dreams, or he does kill you in your dreams. That's a horrifying concept. So the horror here is really in the thought process. It's really in experiencing where his life trajectory once this starts happening. Um, the ending really was, it was kind of hit or miss for me. I think it was a satisfying ending. But all that being said, I started this out talking about Nicolas Cage. He has done some very impressive horror, and I mean, he did Color Out of Space, Mandy, Wally's Wonderland. He also did, it's more of an action film, it's touted, but I believe it's a little bit more horror concept. Drive Angry, that was also great. He's not afraid to take risks with his films. He's not afraid to do horror. He's not afraid to go all out on whatever character he's doing. And it's incredibly satisfying. So, for a horror fright night, I don't necessarily recommend this movie, but if you're looking for a good kind of psychological horror, something that's going to stick with you, that you're going to be thinking about long past when you watched it, I recommend check out Dream Scenario. Right now, it is streaming on HBO's app, and I believe that's where I watched it today. So I would love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear what you're doing for Halloween. If anybody's dressing up, what are you being? I just successfully finished my son's robot gorilla costume. That is a personal life highlight, is the fact that I managed to create that, and it blows out of the water the vampire taco I made 2 years ago. So I hope I'm going to see you, I'm going to do the finale videos for tomorrow, don't worry. But tomorrow might be a little bit up in the air because Halloween is not only my favorite holiday, but also it is my wedding anniversary. My husband and I got married on Halloween, and this year marks our 10-year anniversary, so I'm going to be a little bit busy tomorrow. But I hope that you've enjoyed the series so far. Like I said, we just have one day left, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care, guys.